Battle over tolls heats up this week. Straight ahead on Face the State, does it mean a special session? Also, the influential Connecticut Business and Industry Association comes out with its recommendation on whether Connecticut needs tolls. We'll talk with CBI President Joe Brennan. Also, how do the wealthy towns keep affordable and low-income housing out of their communities? Jacqueline Raybaugh Thomas of the Connecticut Mirror is here with the results of her eye-opening investigation. And it's Memorial Day weekend, when we remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice. There's a new commissioner of Veterans Affairs in Connecticut, and you'll meet him, Thomas Sadi, and how treatment of veterans here will change. It's all straight ahead this Memorial Day weekend, Sunday, May 26th, 2019.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning on this Sunday morning. I'm Dennis House. It's 8:30. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. Lawmakers and Governor Lamont are moving forward with a plan to reinstall tolls across Connecticut. And it could be done in a special session. That's the late word from the Capitol this week. With us today to talk about this and other issues facing our business community in the state, Joe Brennan of CBIA, the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. We thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks, Dennis.
Joe, and when you first heard inklings that there might be tolls returning to Connecticut, what went through your mind?
Well, honestly, we've been talking about this issue since the early 2000s. Knowing that transportation has been a big issue in Connecticut. It has been hamstringing economic growth in the state, particularly in the southern part of the state, but also elsewhere too. So, and we knew years ago that ultimately it would be a very contentious issue because our membership is kind of all over the place, as people in Connecticut are. They understand that we need some revenue in order to improve our infrastructure, but we knew it would be a controversial position no matter which way we went.
When business leaders complain about transportation, what do they tell you specifically they don't like about it?
Well, it's mostly just the congestion, getting their products, the raw materials into their plants, getting their finished products out, getting their people in and out efficiently. A lot of it has to do with that. There's other issues around ports and airports just to make sure we're connected to the global economy. But a lot of it is just around the added cost from having people and trucks sitting on highways too long.
And the governor and others believe that tolls would help improve transportation, but CBA doesn't exactly agree with that.
Yeah, if anybody took the time to read the full statement that came out from our board recently, it says that most people on our board support user fees, which can include electronic tolling. They understand how important this issue is, and we need to resolve it soon. But for a couple of really important reasons, could not support the proposal before the legislature right now. Number one, I think, is just the overall lack of trust that not only business people have, but as I talk to people all over the state, you can have 10 lock boxes. People just don't believe. There's not a lot of trust in government right now that the money is going to really go to transportation. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed. And secondly, it's just the overall fiscal condition of the state of Connecticut. We're still going year after year after year with very, very large deficits. We've got enormous unfunded liabilities. And a lot of folks in our membership felt, yeah, we need to address this, but boy, to put another layer of cost onto an already not working system is going to do more harm than good over the short term. We want to be at the table. We want to find a solution to this, but our board said we cannot support this proposal at this time.
In terms of lack of trust, you're referring to the income tax of the early 1990s. People said that would fix a lot of problems. The gas tax was going to improve transportation. Is that what you're referring to? It's
a combination of things. You all the way back to when the lottery first came in, casino money. People felt it didn't really go where it was told it was going to go. And to your point, a lot of funds have been diverted, particularly around transportation. For years, we rated the Special Transportation Fund. When the governor came in, one of his proposals was to divert money from the motor vehicle tax that was supposed to go to transportation funding, divert that to the general fund. And even though the voters of Connecticut adopted a lockbox last November, it's pretty tight on the back end once money gets in there, but it's not tight on the front end, so money can still be diverted. So I think that's what leads to that lack of trust. And also, just in the last 8 years, we've had two very, very large tax increases that haven't solved our problems. We're still on ongoing deficits. Our economy is really lagging the rest of the region and the country in growth. I can go through all kinds of numbers with you, if you like, on where the economy is right now. So these are just, if we could operate in a vacuum where we only look at transportation, that would be one thing. But when we look at the state budget, which hasn't been resolved yet, paid family and medical leave is going to be enormously disruptive to small businesses. The minimum wage is different than minimum wage increases in the past. It's so dramatic that that's going to be very, very disruptive to small businesses. We just feel in totality we can't do this right now.
Is Connecticut's economy in a better situation than it was a year ago?
I think it's in a better situation, but if you look at the revised 2018 numbers, the economy grew at 2.9%. The rest, all of New England, including Connecticut, grew at 2%. Connecticut only grew at 1%. So we're half of New England and only a third of the national economy. If you look at job growth nationally, it was 1.8% rather. We were 0.6%, so a third of the growth, lagging around other states in the region. If you just look at since the last recession, we've only gained 82% of the total jobs back, 101% of private sector jobs, which is good. But Massachusetts is 360% in private sector. U.S. economy, 250%. Vermont is the worst in New England, other than us, 150%. We're only at 101. We're just not growing, and I think a lot of it is the costs and burdens that we keep putting on employers.
There are people out there who are telling me that it's just the timing with the tolls. They pay tolls to New York, they pay them to Rhode Island, they pay them to Massachusetts, so they know that they're out there. And one of these days they say, well, Connecticut's bound to get tolls back. They just want to see the economy start booming here first before they have this, and also the mandatory minimum wage.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues around it. I spent a lot of time growing up and going to school in New York and Massachusetts, so I've been paying tolls my whole life. But the reality is in those states, it's essentially one highway. Yes, you have tolls and bridges and tunnels around the big cities, but for the most part, it's just one highway through the middle of the state. In New York Thruway, Massachusetts Turnpike. Here we're talking originally 11 highways, now 4 highways, but still 50 gantries. It's just a lot different animal than it is in these other states because just the configuration of Connecticut. We don't have that one major thoroughfare. We've got all these highways, so if you toll all of them or most of them, it just adds a different level of cost than it is in those other states.
In addition to tolls, what else does the CBA so far think of Governor Lamont's economic policies?
Well, I give the governor credit, even on tolls, even though we're in disagreement there. He's pushing forward on a really important issue. We're disagreeing on some of the details here, but I think his messaging around that is it's urgent, and we need to address it, and I think that's proper. He's also talking about growth. If you listen to his budget speech, he mentioned growth all the time, which is what we have been talking about. We need greater growth in Connecticut, so we agree with that. He's talked about dealing with the state's fixed costs, which are important. We need to deal with that. But on the other hand, when you look at the family and medical leave bill that passed the Senate recently, it's much different than what we see in other states. It's going to be much more burdensome on employers, much more expensive. The minimum wage bill, so other things that he has supported, we just have differences of opinion. We think the impact on small business is going to be really, really dramatic, much more than people realize. And now we're talking about a public option for health care that's purportedly to help small businesses, but we just don't see where the real savings is going to be, adding more bureaucratic costs to the state of Connecticut.
You mentioned air travel a little bit earlier in the program, and they do want to improve Bradley Airport and perhaps change the name. Would that help?
Oh, I think so. I'm no expert in this at all, Dennis, but it's just as I travel around the country, you look at different areas, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, elsewhere, the airports there and the redevelopment and expansion of those airports really was an economic development catalyst. And with all the talent we have in Western Massachusetts, Connecticut, this general area, I think if we can continue, and I give credit to Kevin Dillon and others at the Connecticut Airport Authority, if we can continue that entrepreneurial focus on the airport and really grow it as an economic catalyst, I think that's really going to be a big contributing factor to greater growth in the area.
How much would how much would it help to have a geographic name on that title of the airport?
That I don't know. I think having something more identifiable than Bradley would probably be a good thing. I haven't seen any market analysis of that, but just again, when you talk about airports, you usually talk about Pittsburgh, Charlotte, Atlanta, Chicago, whatever it may be, more than the name of the airport. So if we have something maybe more identifiable to this region, that would probably be a good thing.
In terms of job growth in our state, you mentioned we're lagging behind right now in terms of economic growth. What are the big factors in that?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think employers have just been really frightened by the fiscal problems in Connecticut because they've been ongoing and unresolved. That hurts investment. It has a chilling effect on investment. You really need investment in order to have your job growth here. That's number one. Cost is always an issue, particularly for smaller companies that are competing against companies in the South and around the world that have much cheaper bases of production. So that's a big factor. And it just, I think at the end of the day, it really does come down to confidence. And also, you know, just be honest, the legislature with the policies that they bring forward, whether they pass or not, year after year after year, more costs, more burdens, more regulation, more difficult environment in which businesses to grow here has been a big contributing factor. And one of the things that's most troubling to me, if I can get this in, is the lack of real alarm in Connecticut. This has been going on for so long, and the growth is hurting us so much, causing a lot of the budget deficits we've seen. That year after year after year, it's kind of given lip service in the legislature. It ought to be a command focus on how can we make our economy more competitive so we see growth here and take advantage of all the great assets we have here with all the great companies, the great workforce. We have all the assets in the world to be a leader instead of a laggard.
Joe Brennan from CBI. Always a pleasure to have you in the program, sir.
My pleasure, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you again. In a moment, the tale of two Connecticut's and how the wealthier towns keep lower-priced housing out of their towns. And we invite you to watch past editions of Face the State right now on our app or on our YouTube channel.